What sort of research have you been doing into the tariffs?
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I've done a lot of historical, looks at trade wars, who wins them, who doesn't. This Mexico thing has thrown me for a loop because I haven't been able to find any examples of a tariff war over a non-economic issue like immigration at the Mexican border. Now, the basics are tariffs got started because countries wanted to protect their fledgling domestic industries. The U.S. had it in early stages. So that's why tariffs existed. Now, I'm trying to think, who are we trying to protect with tariffs on Mexico? Mexican products are so embedded in the U.S. supply chain that the stocks that have gone down on this news are U.S. stocks. It's the U.S. auto companies. So we're using a tariff threat to try to get Mexico to do something on the border. We're not asking them to cut tariffs. We're not asking them to liberalize their economy. I'm not an expert on immigration, but I don't know what more they can do. Maybe something. But that is a completely non-trade issue.
I mean, we should point out it is legal. The president has vast powers over policy when it comes to tariffs, and we've seen him use it before. He wants to sort of use the economic leverage that the U.S. has. They need us more than we need them to try to get them to move on immigration. 80% of their economy is tied to U.S. trade.
Well, of course it's legal. I don't think anyone is questioning that. I think the question is it wise? Is it productive? Is it likely to achieve the ends that the U.S. is looking for? We're using sticks. Again, I don't purport to be an immigration expert, but what about a carrot? What about sitting down with them and saying, what do you need to do, not at the U.S. border, but the southern border of Mexico, and how can we help? There are ways of addressing the immigration problem. To use a tariff war, first of all, did you see today that they were even talking about waging one against Australia? Why don't we do one at a time? Let's get a victory. Let's show that we can use our economic clout to gain some concessions. Maybe it's China. Let's get a victory in hand before we go off on multi-front wars. So far, all we've done is have to give massive billion-dollar subsidies to American farmers. And I've talked to quite a few of them. They don't want the subsidies. They want to sell their products in the global market. And I think that, I think something has got to give here instead of just a sort of like wild casting about to see who is the next victim going to be. I'd like to see a victory.
What do you think the impact will be if we do go to 5% on the 10th and then another 5 a month later and another? We could end up at 25% tariffs on Mexican goods by October.
Well, again, who are we helping here? Who are we hurting? Because it's not a tariff issue, we're not achieving any economic goals here. We are going to be hurting American consumers and American companies that rely on imported Mexican parts. And that is going to be a big tax.
And they go back and forth across the border, too, for some of the more complex products. It's not the easiest thing to ascertain.
And then the other question, again, is what can Mexico do? I don't purport to be an expert. Maybe they can do something more there. Again, the U.S. has the advantage over Mexico. The trade wars that are won is when a huge, powerful economy turns against a small fledgling economy. They can win those. But the victories are inconsequential because of the size of the U.S. economy compared to Mexico. It's not going to move the needle that much, even if we do, quote unquote, win the war in an economic sense. Now, if we can do they can do something at the border, great. But my feeling is let's talk about that and find ways to help them do it.
Jim, before we wrap up here, let's come to something you have spent a lot of time on, antitrust law. The reports starting on Friday that the DOJ is investigating Alphabet. Not that they're necessarily going to move forward, but give me your take on sort of what we can expect. We're seeing shares of Google down over 6% this morning, and Amazon and Facebook also down sharply.
Well, I think it is a fascinating development because you are seeing this sort of unusual convergence on the far left and the far right of hostility towards these big tech companies. But I have to say, it strikes me, as so often the case in antitrust enforcement, they're deciding to move against Google exactly when Amazon is posing the biggest competitive threat that they've probably faced in their existence. Amazon is gaining share. So my first reaction was, it seems to me this is too late. They've also, does Google favor its own results? That has been thoroughly explored both in the United States and in the EU. I don't think Google should. They clearly mark those ads at the top. I think consumers have adjusted to that. I don't think that's changed significantly, but if they want to look into that, fine. The other question is their management of the ad platforms. That is an interesting new development. I haven't seen the market share data there or some of the practices.
It's a 70%, I think, something along those lines
again,
in the journal today.
All these antitrust cases depend on market definition, and 70% of what is my question. If you're looking at, that's a very narrow definition of that market, and I suspect there will be fierce arguments over that. So anyway, they may investigate, fine, but I think we're a long way from a provable case against Google.